He was born at the same hospital I was, at St. Joseph Hospital, and he was raised in North Shore. He was the opening class of North Shore High School. From there, he went to Sam Houston, and he graduated with an education degree, a coaching degree from Sam Houston State University. When he graduated, Mom and him got married in 1970, August 1st. He started out as a swimming and football coach. In the late 70s, he had a friend of his that worked in the chemical plants over in Deer Park, and he convinced him that he needed to go where the money was going. Oil was booming, and so they packed everything up, sold their house, and he said, I'm done with teaching and coaching, and they built a house in Deer Park. They placed membership at Deer Park Church of Christ, and he worked 3 full years. It was booming, and then they would have massive layoffs. It didn't matter who you were or who you knew. It was, if you were hired within this number to this number, you were gone. And they no more sold everything and moved to Deer Park, and instantly got caught in that cycle of he would get hired, and then about the time that he would get settled in, they'd have a massive layoff and he'd be gone. So after the 3rd layoff, my mother gave him an ultimatum and said, we're either gonna lose everything or you're going back to teaching. He went back to teaching, and at that time, that's when he decided that he was gonna get more education himself. Dad was actually a very, very educated man. He ended up getting a master's at University of Houston Clear Lake, a master's in administration, a master's in special education. I was about to graduate from high school, and he had had all these years to get his education. It was now time for them to focus on me to go to college. And so his time was up. So whenever I started to go to college, that's when he had to stop. He would have continued on and done college forever, I think, if he had the opportunity to. He loved being in school. He loved being a forever student. Where he started out as coaching and doing sports, he later on went into more like history. Obviously, he worked with special ed students, and he did everything from emotionally disturbed students to special needs, autistic children, Down syndrome, to everything. He taught the whole gamut. My father has one sibling, and she is 10 years older than him. We owned a travel trailer pretty much all of my life. One of the privileges of being an only child was if my mother said, hey, we want to go here, we'd pack up and just go. We've always had a passion for Disney World, so we would make a couple of trips out there. My dad's always been a large man. And one of the funniest stories growing up is we went to Disney World, and the water park had just opened there at Disney World. And so we climb all the way up to the top of this water slide. I make my dad go first. Well, him being a rather large man, as you're speeding down this water coaster, it had turns and banks to it. And I'm going after him, and as he hits each one of these turns, he's washing up higher and higher off the edge of these turns. And I could just picture, before we actually go into the pool at the bottom, that he was going to go flying off sideways and fly off the thing. He only did it once. I've gone to more car shows. My dad always had a side hustle. From the time I was 10 years old, my mother was always sick. He always had to have a side hustle to keep up with making enough money for her to go to the appropriate doctors and get the appropriate medication. And he had his own company where he would go in and put a bid into a neighborhood that would have like a community pool. And then he would be the one that would run it for the summer and maintenance and maintain it during the winter. He actually was a deacon at Deer Park Church of Christ for many years. He helped with making sure that the communion and all that was done. I do remember that. but I don't know what specifically he was in charge of. He never met a stranger, very faithful. He was a very hard worker, not always a smart worker. He always whistled. He was cheerful. He sounded like a songbird. He loved music. He loved all different kinds of music. Growing up, a lot of the traveling that we did is we went to music festivals. My dad actually taught driver's ed for years. He has probably taught tens of thousands of people to drive. I'm not exaggerating. When my mother was really bad sick, I can remember him getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going and throwing a newspaper route, getting done with the newspaper route, going straight to school and teaching school all day long. And then as soon as school was out, he would then leave and go to a driver's ed school and teach driver's ed from 3 to 7 o'clock at night, and come home around 8 o'clock at night, eat dinner, go to bed, get up at 4 in the morning to start throwing a newspaper out at 5 a.m. the next day. My children, all of them, were his tag-along, his buddies. He developed blood clots. We found out he had colon cancer about probably 7 years ago now. The heart-wrenching part of it was every time he would get a new blood clot, he was not getting the appropriate type of oxygen to his brain. And so this very educated, very learned man started losing his memories. I feel like I've lost my father not one time. I lost my father 101 times, because the father that passed away, that's not the same father that I grew up with. That's not the same father that I had when I got married. That wasn't the same dad that I had when I had my children. He's in a better place. He's with my mother. I don't want to see him suffer any longer.